Si conviertes tu desesperación en determinación, entonces estar rodeado se convierte en algo completamente distinto. Se convierte en una oportunidad. Una oportunidad para demostrar que una persona, luchando por su vida, luchando por sus compañeros de armas, luchando por algo más grande que sí misma, puede lograr lo imposible. McKay aprovechó esa oportunidad. Y al hacerlo, se ganó un lugar en el panteón silencioso de héroes anónimos que cambiaron el mundo no con grandes gestos, sino con la simple y tenaz negativa a rendirse. La cresta se mantiene hoy prácticamente igual que en 1944. La selva ha vuelto a crecer. Las cicatrices de la batalla se han desvanecido, pero el recuerdo perdura. Y mientras haya gente dispuesta a contar la historia, mientras haya quienes comprendan el valor del coraje y el sacrificio, el legado de Harold McKay perdurará. No como una historia de guerra, sino como un testimonio del poder del espíritu humano. Un recordatorio de que incluso en nuestros momentos más oscuros, incluso cuando todo parece perdido, tenemos dentro de nosotros la capacidad de levantarnos, luchar y superarnos. Esa es la lección de la cresta. Esa es la lección de Harold McKay. Y esa es una lección que el mundo nunca debe olvidar. If you believe stories like this one, te vanisa with time. Subscribe. Let's keep the memory alive together. To understand why a 24-year-old lad from Oregon would disobey a direct order and choose almost 13 days of retreat, you need to understand what happened 3 weeks earlier at the Kumusi River. Guys who need a being part of a rearward action covering an IE withdrawal. The plan was simple. All the river crossing for 6 hours, then fall back under cover of darkness. But the Japanese attacked earlier than expected, with more force than intelligentsia predicted. The crossing became a slaughter. MCK watchmen drowned in the river, walled down by 8 packs, while Japanese machine guns racked the water. A watch lieutenant can take a bullet through the throat while dragging a wounded private towards safety. A watch his best friend, a kid from Boston named Tommy Rizzo, step on a mine that scattered him across 20 yards of jungle. MCK survived because was lucky, because they were in position on the far bank providing covering fire, because far is arbitrary and cruel. 73 men went into that action. 28 came out. MCK carried that mud with him every day after. 45 men de because command miscalculated, because inteligencia failed, because someone grabbed the China mad decisions based on maps and reports instead of mud and blow. Ede obeyed orders at Kumusi. Ede retreated when told to retreat. And 45 men died anyway. So when Captain Oyan's voice crackled over the radio ordering another withdrawal, another retreat in the face of another miscalculated enemy force, something in MCK snapped. No try, no despair. Used a call, clear certainty that following orders wasn't the same thing as doing what was right. MCK had grown up in the timber country of Western Oregon, in a town called Alsea where the mine industries were logging and living. His father had worked the lumber camps until a widowmaker, a falling branch, crashed his spine and left him in a wheelchair at 42. MCK learned early that life was precarious, that one moment of inattention cold and everything, that the forest didn't take care about your plans or dreams. He started working the lumber camps at 16, lying about his age, sending money home to help his mother care for his father and 3 younger sisters. The work was brutal, felling trees at us too for centuries, dragging logs through mud, operating equipment that could kill you if you made one mistake. But it taught MCK things the army couldn't teach. It taught him patience. It taught him to read terrain, to understand angles and weight distribution, to calculate risks in real time. It taught him that panic killed, that slow and steady kept you alive, that the man who kept his head when chaos erupted was the man who went home at the end of the day. Those lessons served him well in the jungle. While other soldiers thrashed through the undergrowth, MCK moved like it was still in the Oregon forest, quiet, economical, reading the land. While other soldiers fired wildly at shadows, MCK taught his team, and carefully, made every shot count. His sergeants noticed. His fellow soldiers noticed. They started calling him Timber, because he was solid, unsaqueable, the kind of man you wanted next to you when things went bad. The Japanese advance scouts appeared 15 minutes after MCK made his decision to stay. 3 men, moving cautiously through the jungle, rifles at the ready, eyes scanning the undergrowth. They were good soldiers, disciplined, alert, trained, but they weren't expecting resistance. Inteligencia reported the Americans were withdrawing. The paso la being clear. McKay watched them throw his rifle sights, controlling his breathing, waiting for the perfect moment. He learned in the lumber camps that timing was everything. Pull the so too early and you waste energy. What all on under falls their own way and kills you. Combat was the same. He let the scouts move deeper into the kill zone. Let them cluster together near a bend in the trail where the jungle closed in tight on both sides. Then he fired. The Springfield backed against his shoulder. The lead scout dropped instantly. A red mist hanging in the humidor where his head had been. McKay guarded the bolt. Smooth. Practiced the motion as natural as breathing. And fired again. The second scout spun and fell, clutching his chest. The third scout dove for cover behind the termite mound, bringing his rifle up, searching for the shooter. McKay fired a third time. The bullet punched through the termite mound and through the man behind it. 3 shots, 3 dead men, 7 seconds. McKay immediately rolled left, moving 10 yards through the undergrowth before settling into a new position behind a stand of bamboo. You never start where you shot from. That was Rule 1. Silence crashed over the jungle like a physical weight. The insects stopped their constant buzzing. The birds fled at the sound of gunfire. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. McKay reloaded his rifle, hand steady, and waited. And what came next? The scouts were overdue to report. The mine force would send more men to investigate. They defined the bodies, realized the pass was defended, and then they had to make a choice. Commit to forcing the pass or find another route. McKay was betting they commit. The terrain around Wairopi was brutal. Cliffs, ravines, jungle so thick you needed a machete to move 10 feet. The pass was the only viable route for moving troops and supplies quickly. They come, and McKay would be waiting. 20 minutes later, I heard them. Not 3 men this time. More, maybe 20, maybe 30, moving with less caution now, angry about the scouts, confident in their numbers. They entered the pass in a staggered column, professionals passing, weapons ready. McKay had positioned himself 30 yards up the trail, edited slightly on a small illegal McClure field of fire down the length of the pass. He learned in the 40s that elevation was everything. Height meant advantage. Height meant you control the engagement. He waited until 15 men were visible in the kill zone, then opened fire. The Springfield wasn't an automatic weapon like the Japanese type 10 submachine guns or even the American bars. It was a bolt-action rifle, old-fashioned, requiring manual operation between each shot, but in the hands of someone who knew how to use it, someone who had spent years calculating angles and distances, someone who understood patience and precision, it was devastatingly effective. McKay fired, worked the bolt, acquired the next target, fired again. Each shot was aimed, deliberate, purposeful, center mass, the largest target, the highest probability of a hit. He didn't try for hard shots or fancy marksmanship. He used put rounds into chests and stomachs and dropped men where they stood. The Japanese soldiers scattered, diving for cover, returning fire wildly into the jungle. Bullets snapped through the leaves around the McKay, tugging into tree trunks, ricocheting off rocks. But they didn't know where it was. They were shooting at shadows, at moveless, at guesses. McKay stayed calm, stayed hidden, kept firing. When his first clip ran dry, 5 rounds, he reloaded smoothly, muscle memory from 10,000 practice repetitions taking over. Another clip, 5 more shots, 5 more men down. The Japanese broke, retreating back down the pass, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead. McKay had killed 11 men in less than 3 minutes. He shifted position immediately, moving 40 yards to the right, finding new cover behind a fallen tree. His heart was pounding now, adrenaline flooding his system, but his hands remained steady. This was just beginning. The Japanese officer in command of the advance force, Lieutenant Ken Hitachi, stood behind a large boulder 200 yards down the pass and tried to make sense of the tactical situation. His orders were clear: secure the pass, advance to the air supply depot, capture or destroy it. Speed was essential. The Americans were retreating, disorganized, vulnerable. This all have been a simple march followed by a quick assault. Instead, his scouts were under the useless 11 men in a brief, brutal engagement. Takahashi was an experienced officer. He had fought in China, in the Philippines, in the early weeks of the New Guinea campaign. And what organized resistance looked like. This wasn't it. This was something different. One sniper, maybe two at most, well positioned, well trained, but ultimately used one or two men against his entire company of 90 soldiers. The math was simple. Overwhelming force ghoul prevailed. Takahashi gave the order. Full assault. 3 squads advancing simultaneously. One up the center of the pass, one on each flank moving through jungle. Suppressing fear from the rear. The ghoul flashed out the sniper and crossed him under sheer weight of numbers. It was a sound tactic. It's all everywhere. But Lieutenant Takahashi didn't know it was facing a man who had spent 8 years working in forties where one mistake meant that, who had learned to read and like term and read newspapers, who understood fields of fear and angles of approach with an intuitive clarity that came from experience, not training manuals. MCK heard them coming before he saw them. The jungle wasn't bad, not silent. Boots on mud made sound. Equipment handling made sound. Men breathing hard in the oppressive humidity made sound. A track the approaching squads by ear, building a mental map of their positions, their speed, their likely routes. The center squad would come up the pass itself, using the clear drive for speed. The flanking squads would move slower, fighting through the undergrowth, but they tried to gain elevation to fire down into his expected position. MCK had already planned for this. EDV moving constantly since the last engagement, and his new position gave him overlapping fields of fire on both the pass and the likely flanking routes. More importantly, ED spent the last 20 minutes preparing a surprise. MCK had 4 grenades. ED taken 2 of them and read a simple trap. Grenades tied to being stressed across the trail at ankle height. Pins pulled using no dar any tension would release them. It was crude but effective. The jungle provided natural materials. Vinyes, rocks for weight. The grenades themselves. MCK had built similar rigs in the lumber camps to trigger warning systems when widowmakers were hanging in the canopy. Same principle, deadly application. Settled into his position behind a massive buttress root of a strangler fig, rifle rested on the natural shelf of wood, unwatted. The center squad hit his tripwire first. The lead soldiers both caught the vine. There was a second of confused resistance as the soldier tried to figure out why his lebolte moved forward, and both grenades detonated simultaneously. The explosion was massive in the confined space of the pass, amplified by the surrounding terrain. Shrapnel and concussive force tore through the squad. Men screamed. Bodies flew backward. The jungle itself seemed to erupt in fire and smoke. MCK didn't want to assess the damage. He opened fire on the eastern flanking squad, which had frozen at the sound of the explosion, silhouette perfectly against the lighter green of the understory vegetation. He dropped 3 men in quick succession, where the bolt, fire again, dropped a 4th. The survivors went to ground, returning fire, but they were shooting blind, panicked. MCK shifted his arm to the western flanking squad, which was trying to advance under the cover of the chaos. 2 more stats, 2 more men down. Then he grabbed his rifle and moved again, scrambling 20 yards back and to the left, getting clear of his firing position before the Japanese could coordinate their response. A cold hero officer shouting orders, trying to regain control, trying to organize a coherent counterattack. But they were fighting in terrain they didn't know, against an enemy they couldn't see, and every second they spent organizing was another second MCK used to reposition and reload. Lieutenant Takahashi stared at the carnage in the pass and felt something and felt since the early days in China. Doubt. The grenade trap killed 7 men buttressed and wounded 5 more. Combined with the sniper fire, Ede lost more than 20 soldiers in less than 10 minutes. 20 men, nearly a quarter of his company. And still didn't have a clear picture of what was facing. Was it 1 sniper? 5? 10? Were there machine gun nests undetected? Was this a prepared defensive position or used opportunistic resistance? The uncertainty was worse than the casualties. Takahashi had been told that certainty was the foundation of tactics. Know your enemy. Know the terrain. Know your objective. Execute with precision. But the situation violated all those principles. And knew nothing except that men kept dying and the pass remained blocked. A mad decision born of frustration and brewing desperation. A goal can meet everything. Al remaining squads, al atonce, from multiple angles. Someone would get through. Someone would kill this invisible enemy. And then the advance call continued. He gave the orders. 60 men, the entire remainder of his force, prepared to assault the pass simultaneously. MCK saw them assign through gaps in the jungle canopy and knew this was it. The final push. Everything the Japanese had left coming at 11. 60 men against 1. The map was brutal and simple. A count killed them all. Count even slew them all. But maybe didn't have it all. Had been checking his watch periodically, tracking time. It had been 47 minutes since the captain Jan's withdrew order. The tracks at the depot would be loaded by now. They'd be starting to roll. If MCK called for another 30 minutes, maybe 40, the wounded would be clear, the supplies would be evacuated, and the depot could be destroyed to deny it to the enemy. 40 minutes. MCK had 32 rounds left, 2 grenades, 1 bayonet, and a lifetime of experience dealing with impossible situations in unforgiving environments. In the lumber camps, when a tree started falling the wrong way, you didn't panic. You calculated. You look for options. You made the best choice available and committed completely. MCK looked at the terrain, at his ammunition, at the approaching enemy force, and made a calculation. A couldn't win this fight, but a could make it so expensive, so costly, so bloody that the Japanese would be too weakened to continue the advance even if they did kill him. That would be a no. That would mean something. The assault came like a storm. 60 men moving through jungle and up the pass, firing as they advanced. Grenades are saying through there, officers screaming orders, the entire force committed to overwhelming the defender through sheer volume of fire and flesh. MCK met them with methodical precision. A fire from one position, 3 shots, 3 hits, then move before a return fire call find him. Fire from another position, 2 shots, 2 hits, then move again. He used the jungle the way a boxer uses footwork, never staying still, always moving, always making himself a difficult target. His Springfield cracked again and again. He had shot carefully armed despite the chaos, despite the bullets snapping past his head, despite the grenades exploding close enough to sour him with dirt and debris. He moved through his mental map of the terrain without thinking, instinct and experience guiding his feet. Behind this tree, over that log, through that gap in the bamboo. Every position chosen for its field of fire and its escape route. Every shot taken with the knowledge that it may be his last. Men fell. The Japanese kept coming. Kai's rifle grew hot, the barrel almost burning his hand. His shoulder ached from the constant recoil. His ears ran from the Sesenta gunfire. None of it mattered. He kept moving, kept shooting, kept killing. A Japanese soldier broke through on the eastern flank, appearing suddenly through the undergrowth 15 feet from Kai's position. The man as his rifle bar MCK was faster, pulling his bayonet and landing forward in one smooth motion. The blood went in under the soldier's ribcage, angled up toward the earth. The man gasped, eyes wide with shock, and collapsed. MCK pulled the blood free, turned, and fired his rifle one under another soldier approaching from the left. The shot went wide back close enough to make the soldier dive for cover. MCK used the moment to reload, dropping his empty clip and slamming in a fresh one with practiced speed. 5 rounds left in his ammunition supply. 5 rounds. He killed or wounded more than 30 men. The map was catching up to him. The jungle around Kai's position was now so saturated with enemy soldiers that movement was becoming impossible. Everywhere he turned, there were Japanese infantry. Some dying, some wounded, many still combat effective and desperately searching for the man who turned their advance into a nightmare. MCK fired his last 5 rounds in rapid succession, not bothering to move between shots because there was nowhere left to move. 5 scuds, 4 hits, 1 miss. Then the Springfield's bolt lagged back on an empty chamber and the MCK was out of ammunition. He dropped the rifle and pulled his 2 remaining grenades. A Japanese soldier spotted him, shouted, raised his weapon. MCK threw the first grenade directly at the man. It bounced off the soldier's chest and detonated a second later, killing man 3 others nearby. MCK threw the second grenade into a cluster of soldiers trying to flank him from the right. The explosion was followed by screams. Then MCK was out of explosives, out of options, out of everything except the bayonet in his hand and the absolute certainty that they don't know. The trucks were away by now. The wounded were safe. The depot would be evacuated or destroyed. He devoted the team. Paid the price. Finish the hove. A Japanese officer appeared through the smoke, saw drone, moving toward McKay with the focused intensity of a man who found his target at last. McKay raised the bayonet, shifted his weight into a fighting stance his army instructors would have recognized, and prepared to deal away the lead. On his feet, facing the enemy, giving everything until there was nothing left to give. The officer was 5 feet away when the jungle erupted in automatic weapons fire. Not Japanese fire. American. Browning automatic rifles, Thompson submachine guns, the distinctive rattle of a 30 caliber machine gun. The Japanese officer jerked and spun as bullets tore through him. All around McKay, enemy soldiers were falling, caught in a devastating crossfire from elevated positions on both sides of the pass. McKay dropped flat, pressing himself into the mud, trying to understand what was happening. Through the chaos and smoke, he heard a voice he recognized. Captain Holland, shouting orders, directing fire, coordinating an assault. The captain had brought the company back. They heard the Sesenta gunfire, realized McKay had retreated, understood what he was trying to do, and come back to support him. The Japanese force, already battered and demoralized from fighting McKay, broke completely under the first assault. Those who could rounded, abandoning their weapons and wounded in their desperation to escape the killing ground the pass had become. Those who could run surrendered or died. In less than 5 minutes, it was over. Captain Holland found McKay still lying in the mud, still gripping the bayonet, unable to keep the professor was alive. The captain knelt beside him, put a hand on his shoulder, and said, "You stupid, brave son of a bitch. I gave you a direct order to retreat." McKay looked up at him, exhausted beyond words, and managed to say, "Tracks get clear." Holland nodded. Every last one. 300 wounded evacuated. Supplies destroyed so the enemy can't use them. The reports gone, but all people are safe. McKay closed his eyes. Then it was worth it. Holland helped him to his feet, supported him when his legs threatened to give out, and together they walked back down the pass through the scattered bodies of 53 Japanese soldiers that McKay killed or mortally wounded over the course of 73 minutes of sustained combat. 52 men, 1 soldier, 1 rifle, one impossible decision to stay when everyone else had left. The medics extended on McKay immediately, checking in 4 wounds. Somehow, miraculously, he survived the entire engagement with only minor injuries, cuts, bruises, a gash on his forearm from a piece of shrapnel, ringing ears, and the dead bone awareness that came from pushing the human body and mind beyond their normal limits. A soul have died a dozen times over. But some skills that kept him alive in the Oregon forest: paciencia, precisión, reading terrain, staying calm under pressure, kept him alive in the jungle. Where are you watching this story from? Comment below. The official report filed by Captain Holland described Kai's actions as an extraordinary display of tactical skill and personal care that prevented a significant enemy force from capturing critical supplies and inflicting casualties on evacuating wounded personnel. The report recommended McKay for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation worked its way up the chain of command, through battalion, through regiment, through division. It reached the desk of General Douglas MacArthur himself, who read, signed it, and sent it forward to Washington. 10 months later, in a ceremony at Fort Lewis, Washington, Private First Class Daniel McKay stood at attention while General never pinned the Medal of Honor on his uniform and shook his hand. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty while engaged in action against enemy Japanese forces." When his unit was ordered to withdraw in the face of overwhelming opposition, Private First Class McKay voluntarily remained at his position to cover the withdrawal and protect the evacuation of wounded personnel from a forward supply depot. Despite being heavily outnumbered, Private First Class McKay single-handedly engaged the enemy force, killing 52 enemy soldiers and halting their bands long enough to ensure the successful evacuation of 300 wounded men and critical supplies. His extraordinary heroism and selfless devotion to duty reflect great credit upon himself and the armed forces of United States. McKay went back to Oregon after the war ended. He didn't talk about Wairopi Pass, didn't give interviews, didn't write memoirs. He just went back to the forest, back to the timber camps, back to the work he had known before the war interrupted. The Medal of Honor went into a drawer. Mari das kulticher nameda lice junue venas uliervad neveras que about editas recause soicos in his aizat sometins were better left in the past. They had 2 children. Mthekai told them about the forest, about patience, about doing your hoe without plant, about standing firm when things got hard. And never told them about the past. They learned about it from other people, from newspaper articles done by curious teachers, from veterans who recognized their father's name. When they asked him about it, was it true? Did you really kill 52 men? Did you really stay when everyone else left? Mthekai would look uncomfortable and say, "Bar's not something to celebrate. He did what needed doing. That's all." But Alice, who they lived with him for decades, who they held him through the nightmares that come as frequently as the years passed but never completely stopped, who they seen him walk in the night reaching for weapons that weren't there. So I understood. Mthekai antestad at Wairopi to be a hero. Ed está because 45 men died at Kumusi River, and the county lie with more men dying because of retreating when time might make a difference. Ed está because 300 wounded soldiers deserve a chance to life. Ed está because someone to, and they happened to be there. Mthekai died in 1979, 57 years old, from injuries stand when a tree fell down and crushed his chest. He lingered for 3 days in the hospital, long enough for his children and grandchildren to gather, long enough to tell Alice love her one more time, long enough to close his eyes and let go. They buried him in the cemetery outside Alsea with full military honors. Veterans from across the country attended, men who served with him, men who heard his story, men who understood that what Mthekai had done at Wairopi Pass was more than used tactical brilliance or individual carry. It was the embodiment of what it meant to be a soldier. Not the glory of the medals or the recognition, but the simple, terrible willingness to stand in the gap when standing meant dying. To pay whatever price was necessary so that others could life. Mkay's Medal of Honor is displayed in the Oregon State Capitol in Salem. Thousands of people pass it every year. Pause to read the citation, feel a moment of respect or awe, and then move on. Most don't understand what that medal really represents. It's not about killing 52 enemy soldiers, though that accomplishment stands alone in its lethal efficiency. It's about the choice to disobey when obedience meant more than that. The choice to trust your own judgment, your own understanding of the terrain and the tactical situation, over orders given by someone who wasn't there. The choice to value the lives of wounded men you never met over your own survival. Mthekai made that choice in the span of seconds after Captain Oyan's withdrawal order. He assessed the situation, calculated what needed to happen, understood the cost, and decided the mark was worth it. 300 lives in exchange for one. 52 enemy dead to prevent more deaths. Team about with blood and bullets and the steady hands of a man who learned in the Oregon forest that sometimes the only way out is through. Military historians still study the engagement at Wairopi Pass. It's taught in tactical courses as an example of effective use of terrain in a defensive action. Infantry officers analyze Mkay's positioning, his movement patterns, his ammunition discipline. They calculate fields of fire and overlapping kill zones. They discuss how one properly positioned soldier with adequate ammunition and clear sightlines can alter and against numerically superior forces for a limited but tactically significant period. But the real lesson isn't tactical. The real lesson is about initiative. About the carry to make decisions when circumstances demand action but orders fail to account for ground truth. Mthekai had perfect information about the tactical situation. He was there, in the terrain, watching the enemy approach, and his judgment told him that retreating men condemning 300 wounded men to death or capture. So instead, he trusted himself when trust in self meant potential death. And because he made that choice, because he had the skills and carry to execute it, 300 men live who otherwise would have died. That's not use carry. That's leadership at the most fundamental level. Leadership isn't a rank or position. It's taking responsibility for outcomes when outcomes matter more than following orders. The Japanese survivors of Wairopi Pass, interviewed by intelligence officers after the war, described the engagement as fighting was and the most terrifying combat experience of the war. They spoke of an enemy who appeared impossible to pin down, who killed with mechanical precision, who seemed to know the terrain better than they did despite being a foreigner in that jungle. Lieutenant Takashi, who survived the war and returned to Japan, wrote in his memoir that he fought against American, British, Australian, and his forces throughout the Pacific, and none had impressed him as much as the lone soldier at Wairopi. He was not lucky, Takahashi growth. He was killed. He understood that terrain is a weapon, that patience is armor, that discipline is worth more than carry. We had more men, more weapons, more supplies. He had Nali, and Nali won. It's a remarkable admission from an enemy combatant, and it speaks to the fundamental reality of what MCK accomplished. He didn't win through superior firepower. He won through superior understanding of the environment and the tactical situation, through the ability to remain calm and focused while everything around him was chaos and death, through the cumulative wisdom of 8 years working in forties where one mistake meant permanent consequences. McKay's grandchildren ask questions about him now, questions their own parents never dared ask. They want to know what it was like, what it thought about, whether it was haunted by what it had done. Alice, in her nineties now, tells them the truth as I understand it. So he says their grandfather was the calmest man I ever met, and also the saddest. That a cow spent a whole day in the forest and come back looking at peace, but that sometimes I'd catch him staring at nothing with an expression that broke her heart. So he tells them that MCK never celebrated his Medal of Honor, never displayed it, never mentioned it unless directly asked. So he says, it told her late at night after a nightmare at Boken and Bot, that the medal was there for killing 52 men. It was for the 300 who lived. That was the part that mattered to him. Not that they added dead, but the life they preserved. Alice tells the grandchildren that the grandfather was a woman who did terrible things in terrible circumstances, and that both those facts are true and neither cancels out the other. So he says what reveals what people are mad of, and MCK was mad of something strong and true and unbreakable. And when they ask if it was a hero, Alice says, "It could have said no, but everyone who made it of that mountain because está good say yes, and they'd be right." The pass at Wairopi still exists, though the hungry has long since reclaimed it. The trail is overgrown now, used occasionally by locals but mostly forgotten by history. The bodies are gone, buried in war cemeteries or returned to Japan decades ago. No monuments mark the spot where Daniel McKay made his stand. No plaques commemorate the engagement. The hungry remembers nothing. The trees that watched it happen have been unrotted and been replaced by new growth. But the story remains. It remains in military history texts and in the memories of the families whose fathers and grandfathers were on those Russian tracks. It remains in the Medal of Honor displayed in Salem and in the official records filed in the National Archives. Most importantly, it remains as a reminder that wars were not used by generals and strategies and superior resources, but by individual soldiers who, when faced with impossible choices, decided that some things are worth any price. MCK decided that 300 lives were worth his one. He was willing to pay that price completely. That he survived to collect his medal, to go home, to live a full life, was fortune. But the willingness to pay the price, whether fortune favored him or not, that was character. That was heroism. That was Daniel McKay. If this story moved your heart even subscribe. It's the last tribute we can give to men like him.